Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where every day we explore how technology is transforming our life, work, and industry, or indeed our entire world. But today, I want to explore the impacts that technology is having on the world of construction. Because every day, many construction firms still heavily rely on paper-based documentation, email chains, and spreadsheets to manage their projects. But today's guest is leveraging technology to help construction professionals increase their project success by simplifying project management with powerful collaborative software. And Procore Technologies provides cloud-based construction software to clients right across the globe. And using its suite of project management tools, hundreds of thousands of registered Procore users are managing all types of construction projects, including industrial plants, office buildings, apartment complexes, and that list goes on and on. And it is an incredibly exciting topic, which should make you see the world of construction in a whole new light. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to Santa Barbara so you can join me in conversation with Wyatt Jenkins, SVP of Product at Procore. And we're going to talk about connecting the people who build the world onto a single global platform, all thanks to technology. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Wyatt. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Hey, Wyatt Jenkins, and I'm the head of product, the SVP of global product for Procore, a construction technology company. And yeah, I manage all of the products, the technology products that our company creates.
Now, just for people that are tuning in and hearing about you guys for the first time, the construction industry is one of the most important industries in the world, without doubt, but one that not many people listening would automatically associate with technology and software. So can you set the scene and tell the listeners a little bit more about the kind of problems that you're solving in the industry with technology, of course?
Yeah, it's fascinating. Construction is 13% global GDP and 7% of the total workforce of the world. So it's massive. And you're right. It's under digitized. There's a slide you can get from some of the consulting firms where construction is right above hunting and agriculture in terms of the amount of digitization that's happened in the industry. And I guess, I think it's, you're right that it's one of the most important industries. It's also one of the most complicated. A single project can involve hundreds or thousands of people, millions of decisions, design decisions, engineering, specifications, install, schedule, safety. All that complexity adds to a lot of mistakes and rework. We talk about rework a lot in construction. Rework means we did something wrong and we got to do it over again. And that's why it's just so important to leverage technology to make this industry better. Because rework, the obvious stuff, right? Rework costs time because somebody they built that wall wrong and they got to tear it down and rebuild it. It costs materials. 440 tons of construction waste get put into landfills every year, and 60% of that is due to rework. And at its worst, it costs lives because more than half of safety accidents that happen in construction are because of rework. Because if you think about it, somebody's late at that point. They already built it and they have to rebuild it. And so they rush. And when people rush, they make mistakes. So for a lot of reasons, it's an incredibly important industry to innovate on. And the benefits are very tangible. Coming from a bunch of other tech companies, myself, I've spent a lot of my career moving pixels around on websites, and it's refreshing to work on technology that can have such a human impact on an industry like this.
And speaking of an impact on the industry, of course, every industry has been impacted by the global pandemic, but I would imagine that the construction industry more than most. But is there anything you can share on that and how it has impacted the industry over the last 12 months?
There's a lot. It's true that construction this is the year 2020 that construction made a big move to digital. That's true. And the problem is construction can't stop. So when the global pandemic tried to do just that, 2020 became the year that we saw a lot of companies tip over and decide, you know what, it's time to make this more efficient. It's time to track the data. So this has definitely been an exciting year for construction and construction technology, but there's some specific examples I can give. Costs are going up. COVID testing has become standard in a lot of projects at rates of $50 to $90 per head. Trades work in tight groups. So when there's an event, a COVID outbreak, it spreads very fast. And your schedule for the project can be in perfect shape one day, and the next day you've got 2 full crews out for 14 days. And you're lucky if that's all you get. These chain reactions make everything worse. Same thing's happening with manufacturers and suppliers who are sending materials to construction sites. In these cases, having just a couple people out of work for a bit can have a negative impact on multiple projects. The downstream impact when a supplier or a manufacturer has these issues, you could see 5 or 6 major construction projects struggle. Owners, people who own buildings, their experience you've seen a shift in their business model, and their real estate strategies have to change as a result. In some cases, project scopes are changing to support the new needs, and in others, they're completely abandoned because that business need no longer exists. And so owners are we're meeting with customers who are investing in construction, and they're completely changing their portfolio and figuring out where they want to invest. There's a lot. Another interesting fact is just the way buildings are inhabited or not inhabited during COVID. Obviously, we have decreased occupancy, or in some cases, no occupancy in everything from stadiums to office buildings. And that's, it's provided an opportunity to advance some project schedules for preventative maintenance and system upgrades. Some people are actually doing more construction because of this. Decreased occupancy for buildings that offer lease space has all but stopped some type of projects. Interior work and other types of tenant improvements are at a standstill because the future of those spaces are still uncertain. Yeah, it's been an interesting year, how the ups and downs of construction have changed.
And I'm curious, was 2020 the year that the construction industry finally went digital, and did the pandemic act as that digital accelerant, or do you think it was already well underway before?
It's certainly the year digital became a requirement. I would definitely say that. Without the basics like remote meetings, digital documents, the industry would have been forced to stop completely and just not work anymore. I think ultimately what this year did was force everyone to take a hard look at their whole business. If there were digital products that could make them more efficient, save them money, or prevent them from losing work, they were most likely implemented. Now, do I think there's a construction company out there drawing plans by hand with a pencil and using graph paper for estimates? And this was the year that forced them to buy a computer? No. So I think there's a caveat to it, but the influx of demand at Procore definitely shows a shift. We often say construction's, less digitized, but in some ways construction is very, very digitized and even like bleeding edge. For example, what we saw a lot of growth of in this year were drone usage, those dogs that walk the job site from Boston Scientific, because you had a lot of GCs and superintendents who couldn't fly all over the country to look at their job sites anymore. Yeah. And so they were trying to find other ways to collect daily data and upgrades, around the job site. So a lot of job sites you go to, you're going to see all these robots and machines running around, keeping track of work that gets done. So in that sense, it's pretty fascinating, how construction is leveraging the latest technology. And that has shifted a ton this year.
It's incredibly cool. Talk of robots and drones, keeping an eye on everything. But to bring everything to life that we're talking about here today, do you have any use cases that spring to mind that you could possibly share that would just help people listening understand how essentially connecting the people who build the world on a single global platform? Because again, it's incredibly cool, isn't it? How you're uniting everything here.
Like you said, people typically don't think of the construction industry being transformed by technology, but the truth is that it has a rich history of innovation that dates back centuries, right? That the Romans invented concrete that still stands in structures today. Yeah. And when Rome fell, they lost the recipe, and you didn't see any structures like that for a very, very long time. And that kind of proves, how construction in some ways has always been incredibly innovative. Now, today we have a 3D model of an entire skyscraper, in the phone in our pocket. We have camera systems that track temperature changes and check for safety hazards. We have autonomous drones flying around tracking work progress. And all those transformative technologies, are amazing. And so was the battery powered drill, and so was the pen plotter and the spreadsheet. So it's a really interesting business to be in, with the juxtaposition between the most advanced technology and, a lot of people who just need to do hard work. One thing you asked was for examples. So I'll talk a little bit about what technology we're building at Procore. First of all, we are a single source of truth in terms of construction data. So at this point in our life cycle, we have a process or a workflow for just about anything that happens in construction on our platform. And so what that means to the folks who are doing construction, or the owners who are bidding out construction, is that they know with Procore, all the data is in one place. Then they can get the updates, they can check for inefficiencies. And so most customers who use technology like this, they start to see the value in that rich data across the platform. And before, when you'd be doing something in a pen or paper, now it's tracked and it's measured against the schedule. It's measured against other parts of construction, and you can actually see where you're falling behind statistically. So, we can use AI to predict, likely challenges with your construction project well ahead of the challenges occurring, because we can see when things are falling behind from a benchmark perspective. So that's a real world use case that people appreciate. Another one I'll talk about is, Procore is essentially a big engagement platform. We all these different people, when you think about a job site, the average number of what we call collaborators, people who collaborate on the work, is 170 per project. So, and then some projects you have thousands, if you're doing a bridge or an airport or something like that. And we often say, it's funny because technology, you're not going to use AI to do construction. You're going to use those technologies to support people to do construction more efficiently. And the same goes with engagement, right? It's not that we're trying to in this world, technology is not going to take somebody's job. In this world, technology is going to enable somebody who's great at their job to do it even better. And I think that's a big part of what we do. And having an engagement platform where all these different stakeholders can collaborate, can quickly message one another or send each other RFIs or submittals or any of these construction processes. That's the thing that is really special. And if you can make that fast and somewhat predictive, people can get work done a lot faster. So another way that a very tangible way that we help customers is we get them to engage and connect with one another. I often tell folks who are joining Procore that a lot of technology in construction up to this point has been built like packaged software. It's like, okay, here's the thing and it solves a problem and we sell the thing. But if you go out on a construction job site, it feels a lot more like a network. There's an address and there's hundreds, sometimes thousands of people who don't know each other and who actually work at different companies who all need to collaborate on a project and get that project done. And if everybody's collaborating and working well together, they all benefit from it. There's a shared interest there. That's really special and really cool. That's one of the reasons. That's one of the things that gets me out of the bed in the morning.
Yeah, it really is cool. And we are at the time of the year. We're beginning of a new year of opportunities. Everyone's looking towards the future, hoping for better things. But this is where I'm going to ask you to look into your virtual crystal ball and ask you, are there any predictions or tech trends that you think we're going to see this year, especially in the construction industry around technology?
Yeah, I think especially the way people move. I'll focus on construction a bit here, but
yeah.
First of all, we have COVID relocation happening,
yeah.
which is so interesting, right? Tons of technology workers are going to be displaced from major cities to smaller cities as tech companies go remote. They can make their earnings stretch much farther with lower priced housing, lower taxes, less congestion, and recreational activities likely closer to nature. These cities are going to invest in their innovation hubs and fight to get tech companies to open offices there in the future. We already, over here in the States, we have cities that are like doing these giant campaigns nationwide to attract all these workers who are being displaced from the major hubs. It's so interesting, like Tulsa and Las Vegas and Denver. And the addition of all these new tenants is going to change the way that city works. You're going to have higher green spending. You're going to have local transportation, go up. People are going to not want to drive because they're used to being in cities where they didn't have to drive. So I'd say one trend the COVID relocation is going to have real lasting impact. I'd say transportation itself will see a large impact as well. Sensors and AI technology are going to see increased support in cities that help with traffic congestion prediction, pedestrian flows, and parking patterns. So I think you'll see this nudge for kind of some more of this smart city technology around transportation. Because people impacted by the pandemic, they're going to seek local routes and access to businesses closer to home. So that's a really interesting trend that I'm excited about. Building safety, that's a big one, right?
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but even me, like thinking about going back to work, right? I sort of, in my head, I go, oh, okay. Like how many people are going to be in there? And
yeah.
does anybody have a cold? I think employees are all going to want to know more about the building. If and when they go into the office, how good is the airflow? What's the occupancy load? What do owners do with parts of the building that are unoccupied because they're only at 60% staffing? Real estate developers are going to have to figure out how to make occupants feel safe in buildings and react to changes. So I think that's going to be really interesting. I think we're going to have to get used to this new normal of partial occupancy. And like, what does that mean for net new construction? What does that mean for the buildings that do exist? I guess the last thing I'll point out around this is the other trend is transit-oriented developments. Those are definitely going to see, it's my opinion that those will rise. I think this is going to make American cities resemble European cities more.
Yeah.
The pandemic has upended commuting patterns, and it's going to challenge the concept of central business districts. So you're going to have more of these mini districts that are a mix of residential and commercial. And they're going to have an emphasis on commuters and people without cars. And so I think that'll be an interesting shift due to COVID as well.
And from a Procore kind of viewpoint here, before you came on the podcast today, I had a look on your website and I noticed that you recently published your year in review, and it said that building what's next starts with seeing how far we've come. So can you share some of the insights from that overview? Because I think most of us are continuously marching forward, but it's not often we get to look back and just see how far we've come.
I guess, some of the biggest things that have happened over the last, Procore is 18 years old. It always blows my mind. Well, first of all, Sui was building a house and he was so frustrated, and he was a technologist that was coming out of, the first bubble back in 2001, 2002, which gave him the idea. But the whole first 8-9 years of Procore were just a battle because there weren't mobile phones yet, and job sites didn't have fast internet. And like 3G hadn't really come on strong yet. So for a lot of reasons, Procore was just early, and his tenaciousness And he and the team, they just kept trying, even through the 2008 recession. And where you really see Procore start to take off was as mobile took off and as mobile on job sites took off, right? Because I heard stories of the early 2000s when they were trying to like hang routers up at job sites to get people to use this technology. And, that sounds crazy to me. I'm lucky to be standing on the shoulders of folks who had that much resilience. So when you talk about where we've come from, that's some history and context as to where Procore is today. Now, where Procore started to really take off is 3G, mobile phones, tablets. As those things proliferated in, kind of 2011 to 2014, all of a sudden SaaS software for construction started to make a lot of sense. And that's where you see the company get its footing. And, today, I think, we have an aggregate of 965,000 projects representing over 880 billion of construction volume since January 2014.
Wow.
So with over 370,000 projects that were created in 2019 alone. So you have to imagine each one of these projects, right, it's an address. It's like there's a bridge or there's a home or there's an apartment building, and it might have 20, 50, 500 or 1,000 subcontractors collaborating together. And each of the subcontractors might employ 5, 10, 100, 500 people to do the thing they do. So it's such an interesting network that has been created. And really the growth of this network has been since that 2013 timeframe is when you see the things start to really pop. So that's a little context and history about how far we've come and some of the timeline. And wow, it's growing fast now. So the sky's the limit.
Awesome. And speaking of the sky's the limit, I've got to ask now, what's next for Procore? What's your primary focus going to be this year?
Yeah, I mean, this year we're focusing on a couple big things. One of them is pre-construction. And what that means essentially is all the things that lead up to construction before the first shovel hits the ground. We recently acquired a company, Esticom, that is estimating technology. And basically that's one of the things you would do. You would estimate the project so that you could bid on it before you go into course of construction. So we continue to push, Procore was designed originally for course of construction. Basically the contract started. Okay, we now have a contract and we're going to go build a thing. And now the trends are changing in construction such that the activities pre-construction, the design and the bidding and the collaboration that happens pre-construction is becoming more and more important to reducing that rework I talked about earlier. So this is the year that we're spending a lot of time in pre-construction. This is a big part of our roadmap. We've got a lot of exciting things coming out to help in the pre-construction phase. And we just made that big acquisition of Esticom. So we're planting our flag there and we're really excited about pre-construction. This year we're also doing a lot to go international. I've got an entire segment of the product and technology organization built up to help us go international more quickly. Today we have a big presence in the UK. We have a big presence in Australia and New Zealand, but we're going to be adding more languages. We're going to be looking at Europe. We're going to be looking at a lot of different places. We're not launching officially in those places yet, but it's a push for us this year is to start to prepare for that. So a lot of the typical things you would expect, we're looking at construction standards in different countries in the world. We're looking at currency and translation and all the things that you do to set up an international product. So those are two of the biggies coming up this year is international and pre-construction.
Love that. And for anyone listening, wherever they might be in the world, if they want to find out more information about Procore and the technologies that you're using, maybe even reach out and contact your team. What's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, I mean, you can go to procore.com and you can check out the company. And then, I'm Wyatt, W-Y-A-T-T, at procore.com. If anybody wants to contact me or someone from my team, I'm if you want to learn more about building construction technology products, I'm always happy to help. But yeah, it's I hope people do too. I hope you reach out and or check out the website.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I, for myself, have learned so much, because I think when you're thinking of large-scale construction projects, whether they be in industrial plants, office buildings, apartment complexes, university facilities, retail centres, that list goes on and on, you don't automatically, or at least I didn't associate that with technology. So just hearing a little bit more about Procore technologies and the kind of difference that you're making, incredibly cool. It really is. But more than anything, just thanks for taking a few moments to come and speak with me today. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't mention at the top, but I've spent a lot of time at a lot of different technology companies, Shutterstock and Beatport and Optimizely and Patreon. But when I was growing up, my dad was a construction general contractor. So as a child, in summers, I was on the job site, and I learned about the camaraderie and how teams operate together to get something done at a very young age. And I sort of swore it off, obviously, because it's the thing my dad did, and I was like the rebel, and I didn't want to do anything my dad did. And I threw myself into technology for a big chunk of my youth. And yeah, it's really exciting to be back here. The conversations between my father and I are great over holidays, because now I'm in the industry that he has spent his whole life in. So it's great.
How cool is that? You've come full circle then.
I know.
I'm sure your dad doesn't let you forget that either.
He doesn't. No, he reminds me often. All right, Neil. Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Wow, what a great story, especially how Wyatt finished there and talking about how he didn't want to do what his dad was doing. He chose the tech option. It almost reminded me of that scene in The Godfather 3 where he says, just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in. But I love how he's come full circle. I'd love to be a fly on the wall and listen to those conversations that they had over the holiday season. But I especially love how he experienced life in the construction industry, saw how his dad was working, and then has gone away, learned technology, and now being a big part of improving that industry. It is something quite poetic and beautiful about that. And Procore are helping firms drastically increase project efficiency and accountability by streamlining and mobilising project communications and documentation. And it's that real-time data and accessibility that's minimising costly risks and delays, which ultimately boost profits. But there was a great story behind Procore Technologies today, one that will stay with me long after we've published this episode. But I'm curious, if you work in the construction industry, how have you seen technology transform your work? What are the good things? What are the bad things? I want to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. I want to hear it all. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. You can ask those questions, share your experiences, or even come on the podcast and share your story. And if you just want to check out 1,500 other podcast interviews, go over to my website, techblogwriter.co.uk, where you'll also find how you can work with me too. But I'm afraid that's it for this episode. I'll return tomorrow bright and early, but a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.